Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. So there's a comment that stood out in my Imperial Dynasty video that is actually the entire basis for making this particular video. I made that video and I talked about how the build with that holster is actually fun to build. And somebody said something that I feel is probably, I don't know, if one person says something in a community this big, there's probably one other person who's thinking the same way. And that's, I think, the entire basis for making this video. The person said, I genuinely appreciate you taking time to talk about, in quote, fun builds. Honestly, the best in-slot builds dried this game up in a hurry for me, but fooling around with the deflector shield and trying to come up with a viable build that would at least allow me to solo some challenging content has reinvigorated my desire to play this game. I know there's a lot of negativity surrounding the IP right now, but it should not detract from the fact that the devs put a lot of effort into this game, and reworking that came with World of New York has more to it than I think we've realized. Just my 2 cents, not looking to get into anything with anyone, so just keep on doing what y'all do, have fun, be kind to one another, peace. And somebody replied, Revolution Nexus said, honestly, the most decent, non-confrontational, genuine comment I've seen regarding any video game. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this comment is a loaded comment, but the basis of this comment is that there is a lot of aspects of this game that is much more than the best in slot that we've seen. And one of the really interesting things that happens in the community is whenever we get a new patch, whenever we get any overhaul or reworks or changes, the best in slot videos or the information about the best in slot is usually what comes to the forefront. But you know what happens is the best in slot is usually limited to the playstyles of the people who make those videos, or they're usually highlighting specific builds and the best in slot to those builds. So for most of the people in the community, when we talk about farming and we talk about looking at the game from different perspectives, it's sometimes difficult to get out of that best in slot track where we find ourselves, or me personally, I find myself looking for specific items that are usually very difficult to get, because if I see maybe somebody with a build that has these specific stats, all I start thinking is how I'm gonna get myself an item like that. Or sometimes the developers, they see that it's easy for people to gain access to an item like that, but because it's now becoming much more I would say much more mainstream, they go ahead and nerf those things like they did with the vendors the very first or the very next day of level 40 of the game. I remember getting to level 40 and I bought a pair of contractor's gloves from a vendor, and then the very next day the very next few days they went to the vendor and nerfed it. They nerfed the numbers right there because that was one of the best in-slot items in the game. If not for damage, it's the best in-slot item in regard to weapon damage. And so there are many other things in the game that are much more complex and much more unique than just the contractor's gloves and the fox spear knee pads and the baker's dozen and the focus talent on the chest piece and all that stuff. But I think the popularity of the very interesting gun damage builds have taken away from a lot of these things for a lot of people. So we hear things like there is no weapon diversity, but that's not necessarily the case. There's no build diversity. Everybody just runs all reds. That's not true. I played an entire mission. I don't think anybody fired their weapon in that mission. I'm just joking. I think some people fired their weapons, but we were all using all kinds of fun skills: oxidizer, sniper turret, damage turret, seeker mines. I was using at one point. I started using the assault drone. That is because all of this stuff is fun, and that is the full Division experience. I mean, for many who are new to the game, we always have relied on our skills as we played the game very heavily. The way the Division has always been designed, and I think what happened in the past patches was our skills necessarily were not showing off. When skills first were released with the Division game, they were a dumpster fire. They were a mess. Nobody knew what these things were. Nobody knew what skills were or whatever. But over the year, it took almost a whole year for the developers to start positing a system for skills that actually worked. And even within the weapon damage category, there are many, many builds that you can run that are also fun. And this is the developer's fault that they locked and gated specific items to specific activities. This is where they kill their own build diversity or the perceived build diversity. And a lot of people don't usually have the access to these things. And some of them are basically, your gear sets. They put 3 of the gear sets behind the raid, the backpack and the chest piece, which are 2 very important aspects of gear sets. And they were locked behind Operation Dark Hours, Aces and Eights, Negotiator's Dilemma, and Tip of Despair. So many people have not seen these builds in their full form, and so when they run 4 pieces, they basically get the baseline of these builds, and it limits how much they want to really do because the rest of the data is locked behind an 8-man activity that many people can't even get their hands on. And even when you get into the raid and you get all the blueprints, you still have to go back to the raid to get the base materials. I think you can get them from the normal or from the discovery raid or something. I don't even know, but I want to craft some Aces and Eights stuff, and I don't want to go in the raid so I can craft them, and so these things are going to be mitigated very soon. But I really do appreciate the comments from the person who actually placed this. And I think this is a feeling that I've had personally because I'm like, man, people are complaining about not getting the best rolls. Their loot is trash. But I can almost guarantee we can go into anybody's stash and we'll find some items that are max rolled. Or at least they have high stats rolled on them. But they're probably items that most of the agents do not want at that specific time. So if somebody gets a golden gear item that rolls maybe 100% skill haste, so they get Wyvern, which they are looking for a Wyvern with skill damage, and they get one rolled with maximum weapon handling, in their minds at that time it's trash. But looking at everything, they might be able to roll off the weapon handling and leave maybe the critical hit damage and roll maybe skill damage on there, and then they can crit with their skill damage while they're doing it. It's not the skill haste, skill damage type glove that you would like, but critical hit damage also works with skill damage as well. But it's just looking at the game from a wider angle and how we can get tunnel visioned. I think that's probably why the game seems to get stale with a lot of people in the community. So my entire premise is that go ahead and try builds and try all kinds of crazy stuff that you've never really touched before. Mess with hazard protection. You'll be very surprised what you find with builds like that. I know you're going to lose out on not taking out an enemy NPC with half a mag, but you will enjoy what you see once you start using the different options that are possible in the game. You won't believe it now, but you have to experiment. That's what the Division is about. It's about experimenting. And I think the game's definitely going to hit a much deeper level for each agent who may feel bored already. All right, that's it from me. Thank you very much for watching the video. I appreciate your time on your audience. Leave comments. I read them. And I guess I'll talk to you guys soon, hopefully in the next video. Peace.